Thank you, everyone, for coming in today to my top 5 tips for Age of Darkness Final Stand. My name is Ramchise, and today I'm going to be sharing with you the 5 most important lessons I've learned in this game that have helped me go from losing early on normal difficulty to recently clearing horrific difficulty. Now, I'll put a disclaimer on this. Age of Darkness is designed to be a difficult game, and with some of the RNG elements from map generation and resource placement to the unpredictable pathing of Death Knights, you're not going to win this game every time, and it's designed that way. But if you follow these 5 tips and tricks, hopefully you're going to put yourself in the best position to succeed moving forward. So, without further ado, let's make it happen. Tip 1, snowballing early. Now, this is less of a tip and more of an obvious statement and a quick guide on the first couple days in Age of Darkness up through your first Death Knight. This is really a game where you need to start off quick and put yourself in a position to succeed moving forward, particularly on the upper difficulties where you only have 2 days before that first death wave. You really need to prioritize in order to put yourself in a position to succeed. Now, what does this look like? First and foremost, your first priority has to be getting your stone production up as quickly as possible. Early on, whether it's upgrades, new buildings, more units, everything you want is going to cost stone. And so you need to drop down multiple quarries as quickly as possible. There is a lot of RNG in these maps, but I have yet to have a map that hasn't had 2 stone quarries pretty close by to your starting location. Your goal immediately has to be scouting them and dropping those quarries down as quickly as possible. If you can get up to 16 to 20 stone production per cycle, you're going to put yourself in a pretty good position to succeed, because you're going to need about 150 to 200 before that first Death Knight. Now, once you've built up your stone production, you still need to prioritize because you have a very limited amount of time and a long list of things to do. First and foremost, you need to upgrade your keep. Now, this is going to cost a good amount of resources, but it is priority number 1 because it gives you 2 benefits. First is it increases your gold income from your keep by 50%. You're going to go from 200 to 300. So that increase of income early on per cycle is going to be massively beneficial for you. The second bonus is by upgrading your keep, you're going to increase your resource caps. You start off at a cap of 500 gold and 50 per other resource. That first upgrade is going to get you up to 1,250 gold cap and 75 of each of the resources. Given the fact that when you're at max resources, you are not producing new resources, increasing those caps is so important to keep your economy on track and to make sure that you're being as efficient as possible. Now, that's your early game economy setup. Moving into defense of the first wave, which is kind of a 1B tip here, you have 2 choices after upgrading your keep. Now, on the upper difficulties, you can either rush ballista towers, drop down your wood workshop immediately, upgrade brace towers to ballista towers, drop about 3 to 4 of those bad boys in the death wave, and those AoEs are going to help take out your enemies. It can get a little dicey at times, but with a little bit of micromanagement, you can survive. Your other option, and this is my personal preference, is after upgrading to the keep, build a quick barracks and start pumping out archers. If you can get to about 20 to 25, drop those in watchtowers with a couple layers of tier 1 walls. You're going to be able to survive that first death wave up to nightmare difficulty. And the reason I prefer this path is as soon as that is over, you've got a decent-sized standing army in order to start clearing out the map, finding your first iron mine to switch to arbalists, and really putting yourself in a good position moving forward. But early on, your prioritization needs to be getting your stone production up, upgrading your keep, then deciding how you want to defend that first death wave and commit to it. And that's going to put you in a great position moving into the mid game. Tip number 2 is storehouse your quarries. Hopefully everyone knows what that means, but someone had to tell me about this, and it absolutely changed my economy, and so I wanted to make sure I told everyone. So we talked about in the first tip, upgrading your keep to increase your resource caps. You know, this is something throughout the game you're going to continue to do by dropping down the storehouse building, which is going to increase the caps on all of your resources. But the storehouse building has a second, and I would say much more important function. If you build a storehouse in the green circle of your quarries, it is going to drastically increase the production of that mine. For example, if you have a gold mine that's giving you 1,000 per turn, congratulations, that's an amazing mine. But if you drop a storehouse in the green circle, it's going to go from 1,000 to 2,000. If you drop a second one, it's going to go from 2,000 to about 2,800. If you drop a third one, great mine placement, and you're going to get about 3,600. It's a little bit of diminishing returns, but absolutely dropping down as many as you can, and making sure when you're building your mine, you're putting it in a position to put as many storehouses as possible around it, even if that means missing a tile or two of the actual resource. Now, this is something that is incredibly important early on. When you have limited map control, you want to be dropping down these storehouses to jumpstart your economy early on. But this is something you're going to want to do on day 3 as well as day 23. Every time you get a mine, drop down those storehouses because you are never going to have enough resources. And this is something that's absolutely going to jumpstart your economy and make sure that you're cruising into that final battle. Tip 3 is army composition matters. Now, this isn't a huge topic simply because there's not that many units in Age of Darkness right now, but given the time crunch and the resource crunch, you still need to build your armies efficiently in order to both clear the map to gain new resources, as well as to make sure you're in the best position possible to defend the waves. Now, what I have found here is that melee units have no place in your army. I do not even bother researching the Sentinel troop. I build 0 of the initial warriors. They're just not worth it from a resource perspective, from a fighting perspective. Admittedly, this is something the devs are aware of and are trying to change. But until something drastic changes, you want to go with a ranged-only army. Now, what does that look like? Well, in the first tip, I talked about wanting 20 to 25 archers before the first death wave. And after that, switch over to arbalists immediately. As soon as you can get that iron production, you want to start pumping out arbalists because they're going to help you clear the map as well as defend on those death knights. Arbalist production should never stop throughout the game. I am constantly producing them, can never have enough of them. The only addition you'll want is to start adding some of the impaler units once you get your forge down, and it'll get to the point where you can have an army of about 20 to 30 arbalists, 5 to 10 of the impalers, and you can attack move that army throughout the map and really start to snowball hard and clear out a lot of areas. But end of the day, arbalists, produce as many as you can after switching from archers, add some impalers for good measure, and that's going to form the core of your army. Tip number 4 is using building line of sight properly, and this comes down to using it both defensively as well as offensively, believe it or not. So, as I'm sure everyone has noticed, when the Death Knights roll in, that thick green fog comes with it, and that fog serves 2 purposes. First, obviously, it hurts any of your troops that walk through it, as well as after the death wave is over, any area covered by the green fog is going to spawn enemy units. Therefore, from a defensive perspective, you want to make sure that there is no part of your base or territory that is not covered by building line of sight. Troop line of sight does not count for these Death Knights. And do whatever you have to do. Put a house in a dark corner. Put up your sconces and your fire towers, because there is nothing worse than having a little square of darkness in a remote corner of your base when your army's on the other side of the map. Enemy units spawn. It's a disaster. Don't let it happen to you. Make sure the entire part of your base is covered with building line of sight. So that's using it defensively. Offensively, again, it comes down to limited time, limited troops, limited resources, and a randomly generated map. So you want to be researching and dropping down fire sconces, as well as the fire towers, which have insane line of sight on them, while your army is advancing, so that you gain line of sight of the area you're advancing to. This is going to give you two bonuses. The first is your army compositions obviously should be stomping the enemies around the map, but if you can see the enemies that you're going into, particularly effective at night, it makes clearing that section of the map considerably easier. The second part is you're scouting for resources always. At least I am. I'm always looking for that first gold mine or my 10th iron mine. It doesn't matter. You need more resources. And putting down those fire towers to see exactly where they are, to be more efficient at going to them, it's literally game-changing. It's all about efficiency in this game and being able to see where those resources are, not waste time clearing parts of the map that you don't need to, as well as losing parts of the map you've already cleared with that death fog, is incredibly important. So drop your houses down in dark corners of your base, drop fire towers down as your army is advancing, and you're going to be that much more efficient. Tip number 5 is prioritize single target DPS in your wave defense. Now, this is obviously a survival RTS game, and I've yet to talk about wave defense. That's because, most of the tips and tricks for this, y'all know. Build a nice choke point, build towers, build walls, and defend it. But what's specific to this game is that you need to prioritize your single target DPS. Now, when you see on these upper level difficulties, you see 10,000 units, 20,000, 45,000 on the final night of Horrific, and it seems like, wow, we need a lot of splash AoE damage to take care of all these enemies. The truth is that in a 45,000 wave attack, about 40,000 of those are not a threat. Those small green units really don't pose much of a threat to your base. If you have 2, 3, 4 Grand Ballista Towers, you can hold off 1,000,000 of those little guys, and they're just never going to get through. The big threat on any of these waves are the elite units, particularly those big, massive guys who smash down your walls. They are the ones who are going to really pose a threat to your base, and the Grand Ballista Towers, they're not going to do anything to them. And so this is where it comes back to that army composition. Build up your arbalists and make sure each of your choke points has several of the upgraded watchtowers where you can put 4 of your arbalists in. For your upgrades, for me, on my ranged units, I go 2, 2, 2, 1. That 1 is incredibly important because it increases your garrisoned archers, arbalists, by 100%. Make sure you have 5 to 8 towers at each of your choke point, loaded up with arbalists, put them in a hotkey, and target those big guys. If you do that, you're absolutely going to melt them. If you don't do that and trust your Grand Ballista Towers or whatever else you have to hold them off, that's where you're going to start to hear the lady say, your keep is under attack, because they're just going to chunk down your base. So prioritize putting arbalists in those towers, upgrading them through that middle skill tree, and then the one on the far left for the final one, and make sure to target those big guys. And if you do that, you're going to see a nice victory on your screen at the end of the day.
Our defenses are under attack.
It feels like that's why I build my defenses. Like, I build my defenses to be attacked. You know? Like, I'm working goddamn my fucking hardest out here. And it's like, hey, how would you like 27 ways into your base? Just kidding. Here's 52. What? Like what the fuck? What? You couldn't condense this into one way? Give me some fucking TNT. I'll demo this mountain. We'll turn this into one choke point. You know? Like, let's fuck it up.